Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. The morning in the village starts early. Kelly woke up very early, let the hens out for a walk, fed the few remaining rabbits, and mowed the yard. She looked sadly at the long dilapidated barn with a leaky roof, the abandoned outhouse, the creased fence, and sighed heavily. Her neighbor's cat Carrot Top was there, rubbing against her feet, demanding her own breakfast. She petted him affectionately and poured some milk. Now it was her turn. An old woman poured water into a bowl of yesterday's soup for the dog Juja, and she scratched behind her ear. The dog was already very old, under the blind, served faithfully all her life in this house, and adored her mistress. Feeling warmth, her hands immediately wagged her tail, bouncing on the spot with joy. The elderly woman began to talk to her habitually in the morning. "Ed Shuzhenka, you and I are the only ones left to live. No, there's no one else. The master has been lying in the damp earth for a long time. Cindy, daughter, Michael is the only grandson left, and he's a good for nothing. He won't come here, he'll never be needed. We've left him a house and a yard without Ethan. No man's hands for so many years. What a fate, oh Lord. Easter is coming. We must go to the cemetery today to take care of the graves. That's if by such a holiday the relatives will be left without participation. I'll go look for paint in the barn. I think there was a blue one. And you eat, my dear. While the soup is still warm, I made it especially for you." Kelly found everything she needed. She got ready and went to the cemetery to clean up the graves of her loved ones. Her husband and daughter were buried very close to each other, though they died at different times. Yeah, it's half a day's work. We need to rake the last year's leaves and sweep everything up and paint the fences. The paint's faded in 2 years. Looking at the portrait of her beloved daughter, the woman could not stand it and cried bitterly again, wiping her tears with the edge of her handkerchief. 7 years had passed, and the wound in her heart was not yet healed. Kelly stared at her familiar features, the dimples on her cheeks, the beautiful brown eyes, and the warm, open smile, and the memories came flooding back to her. Then she turned her gaze to the photo of Ethan. It was old, but he was looking at her just as he had when he was alive. Strict but loving. My darlings, how I miss you. How my heart aches and aches. I wish I could hold you now, Cindy, to stroke your thick, silky hair, to have a heart-to-heart talk like we used to. But you're not here. The damned fiend has taken my little blood." The elderly woman began to clean the graves with a special zeal, trying to numb the soul wound that had reopened, while she herself went over her life and memory. Kelly married the village custom to her neighbor's son Ethan, who had returned from the army and was working as a tractor driver. Kelly, who was very young, fell in love with him. She had a long blonde braid and a prominent shape. She was very shy and blushed at every compliment. The boy, after some consultation with his family, married her off in a proper way. Kelly's mother was happy. Ethan, a guy from a good family, didn't drink and gave her daughter in marriage, except no one ever asked Kelly, did she want it or not. The poor bride was worried and cried secretly. She did not know her future husband. They saw each other a couple of times at a dance. That was all. And outside he was too ugly, shorter than her, with large like a shovel hands and a round potato nose. At first, life in the family was far from rosy. She lived with her husband's parents, who were always lecturing and scolding their daughter-in-law. Kelly did not dare to interfere. She listened. But all this irritated her terribly. The young husband saw and understood everything, felt pity for his wife, and decided to change everything. It is not a good thing when parents... After purchasing the necessary materials and getting a plot of land from the village council, Ethan built his house. Kelly helped him with everything, even serving bricks. They'd really wanted to get away from their mother-in-law as soon as possible, so they started living separately. Not right away. Little by little, she appreciated all the virtues of her husband and fell in love with him firmly and forever. Ethan turned out to be an excellent thrifty host. He had golden hands. Ethan built the bathhouse, the outhouse gazebo, and everything with such diligence and zeal. And when Cindy was born, the man began to walk proudly around the village altogether. He was terribly proud of his model family. Kelly, too, tried to keep up with her husband and worked hard. They kept the farm and the vegetable garden. The woman worked as a milkmaid on the farm, but no matter how early she got up, she would not rest until she had done all the work. Ethan often went to town to buy spare parts for the tractor or to the market, and sometimes he would take his daughter with him. It was always such a holiday for Cindy, such an event. Her mother would dress her up beautifully, tie huge white bows, and she only had time to turn her head, looking at the high-rises, expensive squares, and even the capital's life. Living in the capital became a cherished dream of a girl. It seemed to her that this was the only place where she could become a human being and find her happiness. Kelly took pity on her daughter and did not particularly force her to plow in the garden or on the farm. And Cindy didn't show much zeal either. The daughter grew up very pretty for all the boys to look at. As soon as she finished school, she left her parents' house and went to the capital to study nursing. College. My daughter even graduated with honors. She liked her chosen profession. She got a job in a hospital, rented a room in a hostel, often visited her parents, did not forget about them, tried to bring some presents for her mother. They used to sit in the gazebo and chat for a long time in the evening. One day my daughter came so excited, she was glowing with excitement, and began to tell her mother, "I met such a guy, a rich man, the son of a businessman. You can't take your eyes off him. What kind of car does he have? You should have seen it. He took me for a ride with the sunroof open, and it took my breath away. His name is Benjamin." Kelly looked at her daughter strangely and asked, "Where did you meet such a rich guy? Interesting. And that you have already had everything. Forgive me for asking so directly. I'm just afraid for you. That's not how it used to be with us." Cindy was embarrassed, but she didn't hide it from her mother. "What do we care? We only kissed. I like Benjamin so much. I must be in love. My heart just leaps out of my chest, and I feel so good inside. That's how it was with your daddy." The woman sighed softly. "No, my daughter, it was different with Daddy. When I got married, I hardly knew him at all. My parents engaged me, and that was it. Nobody asked me what I wanted. But then, when we started living together, working, doing everything together, I fell in love with your daddy. He is a real master, the head of the family." The girl wondered how awful it was. It was long and boring. And what if he turned out to be bad? Then what? Or couldn't you love him? I think you have to love him. And then you have to get married. So that, like in the movies, your head would spin and the ground would fall out from under your feet. That's what my mother did. So I'm really lucky to have Benjamin. And you don't have to work. After all, the groom is rich. He has a lot of money. It turns out that we are the perfect couple. Kelly, she hugged her daughter, held her close. God willing, Cindy, that it will be so. I wish you nothing but happiness. I'm just afraid for you. Usually rich people marry rich people. They say rich people have their own social circles for a reason. What if your Benjamin doesn't get married and he introduces you to his parents? They don't mind your relationship." Cindy laughed. "Mama, come on, who does that now? We are going to decide whether we live together or not. What do parents have to do with it? Benjamin loves me. He whispers those words to me. He won't betray me. I believe that. By the way, I did not tell you how we met." And the daughter enthusiastically shared her innermost feelings with her mother. The woman was so anxious. She thought to herself, so she grew up. The daughter had fallen in love. So it should be. How will her fate? What lies ahead? If only the guy really turned out to be not bad. She wants her daughter to be happy and free from all of her troubles. And she said aloud, "Do you know that you should invite him to visit us? Come together. If he loves you, he won't refuse. I'll set the table. generous, get acquainted. Let's see your Benjamin. We have a beautiful river, forest, and nature. Take a walk." Cindy just snorted. "Well, Mom, Benjamin certainly doesn't want to go to the country. He's only seen animals in the zoo, and the smell of manure would make him faint. Then he'll leave me for sure. Okay, let's go to bed." 4 months later, my daughter called crying into the phone. "Mommy, you were right about everything. Benjamin is a scumbag and a bastard. He left me. It turns out his parents have been looking for a rich bride for a long time, and he's a bastard. He's been seeing me and her on 2 fronts. And how did he find out I was pregnant? He said he didn't know whose baby it was and disappeared. And in general, it turns out that the village nurse is not his equal mother. I'm so scared. Should I get an abortion? The term is still small. Who would want me alone with a baby?" Kelly's heart clenched, and it was hard to breathe. She took in as much air as she could and said as calmly as possible, "You are not hot, and do not cry, honey. Come and talk to me. We will not scold you with your father. I will prepare him. There's no need for an abortion. Sweetheart, don't ruin the baby's life and your health. I'm asking you. We can do it together. We can help. I'm waiting for you." When her husband found out that her daughter was pregnant and that her fiancé had left her, he turned white and clenched his fists. "What a bastard! What a bastard! And Cindy's good. It's your upbringing. You should have whipped her as a child, not spoiled, and pampered her. What should we do now? She embarrassed her daughter in the whole village. Should we find this one? A fiancé? Let's explain to him in a man's way that this is not the way. It's not human. He took the girl and ran away. Otherwise, he probably won't pay alimony. He won't even acknowledge the kid." Kelly suddenly burst into tears and spoke out in the heat of the moment to her husband. "Why are you doing this, Ethan? Cindy is having a hard time as it is. Don't you dare yell at her. How will she come? You mustn't accuse her of anything. Our girl's in love. She couldn't help herself. She gave in to temptation. She trusted her fiancé. She's been talking about an abortion anyway. I'll beg her not to take the sin on her soul. And don't you dare look for that scoundrel. Don't mess with him. God is his judge. It's all right. We'll grow up. We'll raise our grandson on his feet. It's our destiny." Ethan calmed down, gave his wife a little hug. "Well, I'm sorry, Michael. I was just being emotional. What's done can't be undone. So let people talk. We'll get over it. The main thing is to calm my daughter so she won't make mistakes. Otherwise, she will not forgive herself. I promise I won't scold her. Let her come." And so a little boy came into their family. They named their grandson Michael. Cindy continued to live in the capital. She flatly refused to move to the country. It was hard for her, of course, with her son alone. But it was all right. She somehow got a foothold and coped. Kelly and Ethan tried to help her as much as they could with money. And everything from the garden was fresh. They used to take vitamins for the summer when Ethan was little. Kelly adored the boy and tried to spoil him by buying the tastiest things. But she and Ethan began, and there's only one store in the village, so the salesman found him out. Ethan got angry and started reprimanding his grandson. "What are you doing, Michael? Oh, you bastard. We never had thieves in our family. Why did you steal Grandma's money? Don't you have enough? If you'd said so, we have given it to you. I'll take a belt and give you a good beating. So you'll know. They used to teach us when we were kids with a birch, and they were right. It's the kind of teaching that lasts a lifetime." The boy got angry and shouted, "Just try it. Well, I won't come to this shithole again." And so his mother persuades him not to go and see his grandparents. It's too much to be here and sniffing manure. It's boring. It's fun in the city, me and the guys in the garage listening to music. What's the big deal? I bought a beer. What's the big deal? Then that nasty Clara came running, complaining. Kelly's got her heart in her throat. "Grandson, what kind of beer? You're only 13 years old. You're not even old enough to be a grandpa. And he doesn't drink much, only a little on holidays. You have a golden mom who works 2 jobs, so you do not need anything." The teenager angrily blurted out his daddy. "I guess. The one I got my mama from. She got me pregnant. No one else to look up to. I'm going home tomorrow. I'm sick of the righteous." Michael hasn't been to see them since. Cindy came and complained that her son wasn't getting along. He's going down the wrong road and doesn't want to learn. He's down to F's. Got mixed up with some bad company. He began to drink and smoke. Constant scandals at home. Totally out of control. Ethan was angry. He tried to call and talk to his grandson like a man, but he just waved him off. "Grandfather, don't judge." My mother complained again. So we had a drop to drink with the boys. What's the big deal? It's all right. All right. I don't have time. See you later. The man was nervous and exhausted. He felt sorry for his daughter, and he couldn't help her either. I couldn't get through to my grandson. Ethan grew darker and blacker. He was getting thin, eating, and sleeping badly. When rushed and Cindy took her father to the hospital. It was too late for an examination. The doctors said the last stage. 3 months later, Ethan was gone. Kelly was with him until the last minute. He passed away in her arms, whispering to her with pursed lips, "Forgive me for leaving you. Kelly David, my time has come. Know that all my life I have loved only you and Cindy. Thank you for always being there for me." Only Michael was missed. We didn't see him coming. At his grandfather's funeral, Michael was somber, quiet, and depressed. He comforted his mother and grandmother, and he seemed to get his act together a little, but not for long. Soon it started again. It got to the point where Cindy was forced to hide her purse from her own son. What's the use? He was always trying to steal a few bills, and then he'd spend it on drinks or cigarettes, and they'd fight all over again. And then came the fatal tragedy that finally knocked Kelly unconscious. Died, her only and beloved daughter Cindy. It was so sudden and ridiculous. The woman was running home from a night duty, and she was knocked down right at the intersection by a drunken daredevil, who immediately fled, but precious time was lost. And while passersby called an ambulance, Cindy died without regaining consciousness. The terrible news came over Kelly like a huge avalanche, and she couldn't take it and went to the hospital after the funeral with her heart and blood pressure for a month. There was an investigation, then a trial. The bastard was found and jailed. But Kelly wasn't interested in any of this. What did it matter if no one ever brought Cindy back? Over the past month, the woman had given up and aged considerably. She cried day and night. Michael refused to go to his grandmother's village to live, and it was as if he had completely lost his mind. He did not want to listen to his grandmother. He dreamed of getting rich quick and living the high life, so he could do whatever he wanted. Soon he and 3 other accomplices were caught robbing a kiosk, so his grandson ended up in prison for 5 years. But even there, he managed to do things. He would lose at cards or ask him to send money or a parcel over and over again. Kelly knew that Michael was a lost soul. Still, she felt sorry for her grandson and supported him as if he were her own soulmate. She collected vegetables and fruit, sold them little by little, and gave him parcels to the zone. Going through her life, Kelly quietly finished painting the fence at the cemetery when suddenly she heard someone's voice behind her. "Excuse me, please. Don't you have anything to eat?" At the cemetery, they often bring food to the gravesite. In front of her stood a young boy, about 20 years old, almost like her grandson. He looked miserable, his jacket and pants caked with mud, and his sneakers worn barefoot. His head had not been washed or combed for a long time, but his eyes were so big and sad, like those of a beaten dog. I could see that life had taken its toll on the guy. He was terribly ashamed to beg. He even stepped aside, expecting to be scolded or rebuked by the woman. But Kelly suddenly, without expecting it, said, "Hey, son, I don't have anything on me. I'm sorry." Somehow I did not think, "But come to my place. I will feed you. I have soup and pancakes, and I'll eat with you too, so you won't be bored. My name is Kelly. What's yours? Don't be afraid of me. I'm not gonna tell you how to live your life. He looked at her with gratitude and said, Thank you very much, Kelly. My name is William. I just got out of prison myself. I'm not going to lie, but it wasn't my fault. Honestly, I took someone else's guilt on myself. Now I'm begging to get a job with a criminal record. I'm homeless, so I wandered around begging. Though it was embarrassing, Kelly just shook her head, but didn't pry into the boy's soul. She knew what it was like to be asked every time what was going on. And you feel bad enough as it was. Surprisingly, Zhuzhia greeted her guest unkindly, although she did not dislike strangers, so barked a little for order, and that's all. The old woman set the table and called her guest. Come and eat, William. Everything is ready. I do not have special delicacies. I am a single woman. I live just so that, as they say, the rich are happy. The guy ate regular buckwheat soup like he hadn't eaten in a week. Then he happily drank tea with pancakes and kept praising the treats. Then he suddenly suggested, Kelly, do you want me to chop some wood? You have a lot of them lying around. At least something for you. I will thank you for a delicious lunch. I do not remember when I ate liquid food. The woman was surprised, but agreed. I will be glad if you help me. I can't take it anymore. I can't get my neighbor Liam to help me. He never gets around to it. The boy took up the work, but it was obvious that physically he was very sick, all the time coughing, drenched in sweat and pale. Often he rested. Kelly guessed, William, so you're sick at all? You must have a fever. Let me touch it. Oh my goodness, you're burning up. Go lie down in the hall on your bunk. I'm going to fetch Christina from next door. She's a good girl. She works as a paramedic in the district center. Let them take a look at you, and I'm still a fool for making a sick man chop wood. The elderly woman ran and began to ask the young girl next door, Christina, baby, help. I took a tramp for lunch, and he was sick. He seems to be burning and coughing. Without further ado, Christina took her suitcase and ran off. After all, helping people is her profession. After examining William, Christina long frowned, then said, It looks like neglected bronchitis. We need to urgently prick a course of antibiotics and vitamins. And now take a fever. Otherwise, he could end up with pneumonia. Should we put him in the ward? I'll make arrangements at the district center in a jiffy. William begrudgingly. Did he object? No, not the hospital. I just got out. I don't have the money for treatment. And then there'll be questioning. What's going on? I don't want that. I'm just gonna go quietly, that's all. Well, thank you for everything. And the boy started coughing again. Kelly shook her hands. Where are you going, honey? You're lying down. I'll run to the drugstore and get some medicine. Christina will give you a shot and treat you. You won't say no to Christina. The girl smiled. When have I ever said no to anything? Kelly, you're like a mother to me. Moreover, the man is not going to die. If there's no money, we'll cure him. Don't worry. Now, William, you get undressed while I give you a compress. That's right. Don't be embarrassed. I'm practically a doctor. The boy couldn't take his eyes off this pretty blonde girl with such a sweet voice and gentle, soft hands. He blushed, pale in front of her, and could not associate two words. And she, as if nothing had happened, was rubbing him with professional movements. She gave him injections and listened and shifted her eyebrows. William was ready to be sick forever, just so she wouldn't go anywhere. After 2 weeks, the boy felt better. His cough was almost gone. He stayed with Kelly and helped her with everything around the house. The woman let him renovate the old outhouse and live in it. The boy was very grateful to her. After all, now he did not have to wander and beg. So he worked hard and tried in any way to do something good for the kind and sympathetic woman. He repaired the stove in the bathhouse, and now he stoked it regularly, and everyone enjoyed the steam. Outwardly, the guy didn't look so gaunt either. Kelly gave him a short haircut. He had his clothes washed and darned and washed, and he looked like a man. Christina often dropped in to visit them. They would drink tea together or talk about other things. There was an invisible attraction between the young people, as if they were attracted to each other. But they were just friends and talked. Nothing more than that. The girl helped William settle in. She brought nice polka dot curtains and a tablecloth. Kelly was just glad that William was living with her now. She was no longer lonely and lonely. After all, there was a living soul around. Moreover, William turned out to be a very modest and nice guy, but very shy and not very talkative. He did not like to talk about the past, and Kelly didn't ask much about it. But the neighbors were gossiping on every corner and turning their noses up at her. Kelly was out of her mind in her old age. She couldn't get enough of her grandson in jail. She's got another felon in her house and she ain't got no money. So now she's got an extra mouth in the house. What's he thinking? He's gonna rob or kill him. What the hell? Or if an ex-convict breaks into our garden. You never know what's in his head. Christina alone understood and supported the old woman, but to the neighbors she was crazy too. They openly laughed at the poor orphan who had found a house in the village, which she had inherited from distant relatives, and went to work as a nurse in the district center. They could not understand why she went to help Kelly just to write letters to a blind woman, a grandson in prison, and runs for a pension at the post office. And now they've got a habit of going to her after every shift, as if there were no other things to do. Others, at her age, they're enjoying life in the capital. All the more, the girl is prominent, and this one is stuck in the countryside to mess around with a pensioner and that criminal. Christina really grew up in an orphanage. She still dreams of family and comfort, and she never knew what that is. So she reached out to her neighbor. After all, she was a woman, kind, open, and sympathetic, and she treated Christina as if she were her own daughter. She would listen, advise, and pity. She really liked William a lot, but she had carefully concealed her budding feelings from herself, hiding them in the farthest corner of her soul. The girl scolded herself to stop thinking about him. He is a criminal, a tramp. What kind of fiancé was he? And he's so secretive. Doesn't say anything about himself. He sighs, and his eyes are downcast. But you can see in his eyes that he's a good man. The eyes are like a mirror. They never lie. So it flew by unnoticed. 6 months, William literally transformed the yard and house of Kelly. During that time, repaired the porch and outbuilding, cleaned the chimney, raised rabbits, and faithfully mowed grass for them, making for the winter. The woman became so attached to him that she felt as if he were her own grandson. Suddenly, one day, Juja started barking heavily and tearing off her leash. Michael walked into the yard. Kelly gasped, spluttered her arms, and tried to hug her family man. "Michael, my granddaughter is back." "How happy is that? Come on in. I'll set the table in a jiffy. He has changed so much, just do not recognize." The woman looked at her grandson and really did not recognize him. Michael looked skinny, a hardened criminal with tattoos and a kind of alien cold stare. He hugged his grandmother reluctantly and answered sharply, "Well, it's not the resort. What did you want?" "Okay, come on, feed me. I'm so hungry. I thought I'd go back to my hometown. Get some rest." "Who's that by the porch?" "I don't get it." Kelly walked up to the young man and said, "That's William, my tenant. He lives in the outhouse and helps me around the house. You know that, don't you? I'm having a hard time. I've had a lot of illnesses over the years. William is my grandson, Michael. I want you to meet him. He's come home. Well, let's go to lunch." Michael literally burned William with an unkind look and did not even give him a hand. He just averted his eyes and quietly stepped back. The grandson said angrily through gritted teeth, "That's the last thing I need is other people's eyes on me. What's the fashion to tie all kinds of trash to yourself?" From that day on, Kelly's life fell apart. All my grandson did was drink, and drink all day long. He wouldn't help, and he wasn't in a hurry to get a job. He ignored William, and he tried to stay out of his sight. But he had his eye on Christina Michael, a shapely blue-eyed blonde in her prime, and living alone. He was already mentally doing all sorts of things with her. And so one day, after drinking too much, he brazenly showed up at the girl's house. She was just washing laundry in the summer kitchen and even got scared when she saw her half-drunk grandson Kelly. She openly disliked and feared him. He looked at her lewdly and cynically, then sat down on a chair, lounging imposingly, and began to intimidate her. "Oh, you're beautiful, Christina. I like you. I could just eat you. Do you want to go out? Let's have a drink. I haven't had a woman in prison for a long time. And now a beautiful girl like you showed up right next door." The girl was pissed. She grabbed a heavy cast iron frying pan from the table and shouted, "Get out of my house. If you come here again without asking, or if you offer me such things, I'll go to the precinct. He'll put you right back in your place. Will you go back to where you came from?" "I see." Michael grinned unkindly and hissed, "To hell with you. I'm going. I don't want any trouble with the police. But just so you know, Grandma, she'll be dead soon. And you'll still be mine. And your house, too. You know it." When Michael left, a frightened Christina sat down in a chair and cried from the stress she had endured. She mentally compared this crazy Michael and quiet William, who seemed to be sitting there too, but did not look like a criminal at all. I'll be damned. But from that moment on, the girl kept an eye on her grandson, because she realized he was here for a reason and was obviously up to something. One day, she was pulling weeds in the vegetable garden, and suddenly she heard a voice. It was Michael on the phone in the backyard. He was talking to someone in a high-pitched voice. Silently, like a mouse, she crawled under the pear tree to the fence and listened. The guy almost yelled, "I know I took the deposit. I always keep my promise. Soon I will eliminate the grandmother. Besides me, she has no kin. So the house and the land are yours, and you can build whatever you want. I don't need this place for nothing. Yeah, I'll have it done by the end of the week. But after all, I have to get the poison from somewhere. And they don't sell it on every corner, by the way. I know it's just my problem." Everyone is on the phone. Christina's insides went cold. She waited a while, and then went to Kelly. She called her in on the pretense of taking her blood pressure. She whispered as they entered the courtyard, "Listen, some people came to see you the other day. They wanted to buy a house. Remember, it is important." The old woman only waved her hand. "Yes, these scoundrels have been trying to seduce me for 6 months. 3 times they came from some company. I do not remember. They wanted to buy my house for next to nothing and build a camping site in its place. My house is almost in the woods. The place is fabulous. There's clean air and a river nearby. And I have a good piece of land too, as you can see. With Ethan, we had time to cultivate everything with 4 hands. Now it's all overgrown with weeds. But I won't do it. How to sell a house? Where am I going? To the city. And what have I forgotten in my old age? This is where I was born and where I'll die." "Right. What happened?" Christina was shaking. She began to tell me, "Because I overheard your grandson over the phone telling some people that he'd already taken the deposit and that he'd have you out by the end of the week and that he was going to sell the house. Do you realize you are in danger? What is there to do?" The elderly woman did not believe her neighbor and waved her hands. "What on earth are you talking about?" "Christina, maybe that's not what you heard." "No, I don't. Michael is not like that. I mean, he's been a bully since he was a kid, but to do something like that, that's just not right. I don't even want to think about the bad stuff. Well, let's take your blood pressure and take your pills today or not." But a worried Christina met with William and decided to consult with him. He listened carefully and became alarmed. "This is no joke. I have also noticed that Michael is watching the house, checking everything as if he is getting ready for something. Would he really kill his own grandmother? I couldn't let that happen. I'll shadow him. I promise." A couple of days later, Michael told Grandma he was leaving for work tomorrow and wanted to have a farewell party. He bought 3 bags of all kinds of delicious food and started setting the table himself. And he was surprisingly affectionate and friendly. "Don't worry about me, Granny. I've got everything ready to go. Why stand at the stove? We'll have a drink, a snack, and a proper sit-down. So to say, good riddance to me. Don't call anyone, just 2 of us, like before. I've really abandoned you. That's no good." Surprised, Kelly fussed. "Oh, I'll get some sauerkraut from the cellar and call William to the table. If that's the case, I don't feel comfortable living in the same yard. It's good, Michael, that you found a job, and I was beginning to worry." In fact, our heroine lurked behind the barn and began to look through a crevice. What will happen next? Her grandson's behavior was so unlike his that she suspected something was wrong. Michael had never spoken so sweetly to her in his life, and spending an evening alone with her was out of the question. Is there a catch? There was. Kelly saw his grandson take some white powder in a vial out of his sinus and sprinkle it liberally over his food. He was not sorry. At the same time, he was looking around covertly, watching and listening to make sure no one entered the kitchen. The old woman understood at once. Christina was right. Michael had decided to poison her and send her to the next world. Tears rolled down her wrinkled, aged cheek, and she thought to herself, "So be it. So be it. If even my own grandson does not need me, so why live at all?" She scooped some cabbage into a bowl, called William over, and sat down at the table as if nothing had happened. The man came in, said hello to his son, and sat down at the table too. Michael poured the wine into shot glasses and said there were no other dishes. "So, don't be discouraged. So how about a toast to my departure? To a new job and a new life." The grandson carefully moved them a plate with slices. "You snack at once, Granny, on delicacies, and all the cabbage soup and cabbage, and you, William, help yourself." The woman pulled herself together and took a bite. Preparing for death in her mind, William suddenly knocked the sausage out of her hands and shouted, "Don't eat anything. I'm begging you. He's poisoned everything here." "Oh, you bastard. How could you? This is your own grandmother. Don't you feel sorry for her at all?" Michael's face instantly twisted with hatred. He immediately took a knife out of his pocket and went for William. "Oh, you rat bastard. You think you're spying on me? Yeah. What business is it of yours? Why are you sticking your nosy nose in other people's business? I'll teach you a lesson." Kelly screamed in a panic at Michael. "You couldn't send me to the other side even now. Come to your senses. What are you doing? The devil has got into you, no otherwise. Why are you so mean and cruel? Your mother and my grandfather, and I loved you so much. What have I done to you? What did I do to you?" The young man became insulted and started shouting, "I need money, understand? You were offered to sell a house, weren't you? Well, no, you didn't. And I said yes. Clearly, what do you need such a house and a plot of 50 acres? And I already got the deposit, so there's no going back. And if it wasn't for that bastard, I would have had it all." There was a real scuffle between the 2 men. Michael was waving a knife and screaming, "I'll cut you, you bastard. All because of you. Who invited you here in the first place?" William also shouted, "Don't you dare touch Kelly. She's a holy woman. I won't let you kill her." "I see." A frightened Kelly ran after the police officer. He lived 2 doors down. By the time she got back with help, it was too late. William was bleeding and holding his side. A knife was sticking out of it. And Michael was frantically gathering up his belongings, and he didn't even dare, out of habit, to twist his purse from his grandmother's purse. The scoundrel was handcuffed and taken away. William was taken by ambulance to the hospital in the district center. Devastated and discouraged, Kelly sat on the edge of a chair and wept bitterly, covering her face with her hands. "My God, how could it be? Why did I have to go through all this? I have lived to a ripe old age. My own grandson wanted to poison me. And the main thing is that I loved and pitied him. I gave the last of my life. What's going to happen to William now? The boy suffered for nothing. Wasn't afraid to stand up for her. Didn't let her get killed. What kind of a hero is that? Not like Michael. Christina ran in after her shift, heard from the neighbors what happened. Started comforting the woman. You know, calm down. Kelly, don't cry. Please, my heart is breaking. It's all over. Tomorrow we will go to William. He's not serious yet. He'll be discharged soon. I called and asked, but Michael was born that way. I guess there's nothing we can do about it. But you're not alone. I need you. And William has grown very fond of you. It'll be all right. It'll all be forgotten. Let's go and have some tea and raspberry jam. Have you got any left? Kelly hugged the girl and thanked her sincerely. Thank you, Christina. You are no stranger to me either. You are the only one who understands me. You don't leave me in trouble. You have a kind and responsive heart. Come on, honey. I'm going to brew some peppermint. How do you like it? Kelly was summoned to his office by the investigator, a scowling man named Jacob. He looked sternly at the woman, as if studying her. Then he began an unpleasant conversation. Good afternoon. I called you, Kelly, on the matter of your grandson going to jail for a long time for the attempt on that tramp's life. Plus, there's some other shenanigans that have come to light. Will you sign the affidavit that Michael wanted to poison you? Or have you decided to recant? The woman wiped away a tear and shook her head in the negative. No, comrade investigator, I will not. Let that remain on his conscience. Anyway, he is my own grandson, and I feel sorry for him. I still blame myself for not looking after him. I couldn't bring him up right, keep him from doing bad things. I talked to Michael, and he said he'd feel safer in jail, especially since the people from whom he took the deposit would be looking for him anyway. So be it, but I don't want to add to his sentence. Thank you, William, or I'd probably be dead by now. Jacob looked intently at the woman again. I wonder about you, Kelly. Do you even know who William is, the one you took him in out of pity? He was the one who ran over your daughter 7 years ago. Served time and just got out. Didn't you know who was living under the same roof as you? The woman became physically ill. She started gulping for air and crawling down, losing consciousness. The frightened investigator did not expect such a reaction and realized that he had overreacted in his straightforwardness. He began splashing water on her from a jug, waving a handkerchief, and opened a window. The elderly woman slowly came to her senses and asked for water. She recovered a little. How was I to know, my dear? I was in the hospital for a month after my daughter's funeral, and I hadn't been to court. And why should I? No one could give my daughter back to me. William said he'd done his time, but he assured me he had nothing to do with it. I didn't ask him about it. Jesus, what on earth is going on? You can't trust anybody. I felt so sick to my stomach, as if I'd been doused in slop. Can I go now? It was probably better to die at the hands of her grandson than to find out that she had been feeding a murderer for so long. The woman could hardly make it home, not knowing the way. It was unusually quiet in the yard. After all, she was used to not being alone. Shushiab joyfully twirled beside her mistress, but she did not even look at the dog and wandered into the house. Thank you. At least Christina had cleaned up while she was gone. The woman took Cindy's portrait in her hands, kissed her eyes and cheeks again, and sobbed. Forgive me, darling. I did not know who he was. I would not have let him come to my doorstep. So disgusting, as if I had betrayed you, my darling. That bastard will never set foot in my house again. I promise you that. And he seemed like such a quiet, honest, good guy. And here you are. And I knew. Whose house does the bastard live in? He saw your portrait and didn't say a word. How duplicitous people are. It's unbelievable. Kelly fell into a deep depression and fell ill. The events of the last few days had completely shaken her. She didn't want to eat or get up or see anyone. Christina understood nothing. She tried to cheer up Kelly, thinking that she was so upset about her grandson and wanted to tell her the good news. That's all right. They're discharging William tomorrow. He'll be back, and you won't be so lonely again. He keeps asking how you are. Why don't you come and see him? How does it feel not to say hello? The woman suddenly covered her ears and sobbed so bitterly and doomed. Don't talk to me about him. I hate him. He is a murderer, you know. He killed my daughter, and he did time for it. The investigator told me. He won't set foot in my house. Christina was dumbfounded. She stroked the elderly woman, tried to comfort her, while she herself became indignant, barely waited for the next bus, and rushed to the hospital. She raged. But I'm going to give it to him now. What a bastard to come into a man's house, knowing how much grief you had brought, and live there in peace and take advantage of his kindness. It's unheard of. The angry girl burst into the room like a fury and immediately attacked the guy. It's true. Tell me, look me in the eye. You killed Kelly's daughter and lived quietly in her house, pretending to be a tramp. Why, tell me? William sighed and answered both yes and no. Yes, I was indeed convicted of Cindy's murder and served a whole 5 years. That's all true. But I didn't, you know. I wasn't driving the car. She opened her mouth. How can that be? You're lying again, aren't you? Stop twisting and tell the truth right now. The guy started sputtering. I'm not lying about anything. I was a driver for a businessman at the time. He was a big drinker and he drove around in the pubs, even though he was a model family man and a philanthropist in public. Well, he was driving that night. He, not me. Only the businessman was afraid that everything would be revealed. His wife would find out about his nocturnal adventures and murder and decided to convince me to take the blame. The thing is, I'm an orphan myself. I was raised by my aunt. At the time she was diagnosed with cancer. She needed a very expensive treatment, so the businessman promised me that he would give me some money. It would be enough to cure my aunt, and it would save me for my own apartment. They wouldn't give much. His lawyer would try. So I foolishly bought it. I didn't know what prison was. I thought I would serve 3 years. I would get out, but I would save my loved one, and I would work as before and live in my apartment. But in fact, it turned out differently. I got 5 years. At the trial, they spat in my face, shouted with hatred, the bastard, the murderer. This businessman, the first one, cheated me on every corner. He never gave me any money. My aunt found out what happened and died. That's how I became a bum, an ex-con with a murderer's mark on me. I went to the cemetery for a reason. I wanted to repent, to tell Kelly everything. It's been eating at me, but I couldn't be cowardly. Would she have believed me? Honestly, I can't believe I could be as stupid as I am. So I tried to help. Anything I could do for her. I thought it might be a good time to tell her later. Christina was astonished. She didn't know what to say, but she was sure of one thing. William, you must go and tell everything. And that's the way I'm relieved right now. Would you see the state of Kelly now? She's sobbing and she thinks you're a murderer. She curses and hates you. It isn't right. It isn't fair. The boy nodded his head. You're right, Christina. Stop being a coward. I've done enough stupid things in my life. It doesn't matter if she forgives me or not. The important thing is that I tell the truth. I really can't live with it anymore, like a murderer for real. The next day, William was discharged home, and gathering all of his courage, he went to Kelly's house. Beetle greeted him cheerfully, standing on her hind legs and dancing. He patted her on the withers and petted her. Then he quietly entered the house. The elderly woman lay there, turning her back to the wall, unresponsive to anything. William looked up and said quietly, I did not kill your daughter. Do you hear that? I wasn't driving the car. My landlord talked me into taking the blame, promised me a mountain of gold and to save my aunt from cancer. And I said yes. I did 5 years for nothing. And I was cruelly deceived. My aunt died without waiting for expensive treatment. Didn't see any money either. Now I'm a bum and a deadbeat ex and a murderer, as everyone thinks. But I could swear on my Bible that I wasn't in that car that night. I wanted to tell you at the cemetery that night to ease my soul. I can't live with that anymore. Yeah, I chickened out. I know you won't believe me anyway. I don't expect you to. Well, I'll be going. Goodbye. And thank you for your kindness and responsiveness. You're a very good man. The woman got up and sat down on the bed and told the boy, "Get down on your knees, over there under the icons, and tell the truth. If you lie, God will punish you, don't doubt." The boy knelt down quite calmly, crossed himself, and whispered, "I didn't kill anyone. I swear I didn't kill your daughter that day." Kelly exhaled. "So it's all true. You're not lying." "Now I do." "Why, tell me, why did you do it? How young you all are, you fools. You've ruined your whole destiny. Now you're branded. It's for life. And the one who killed him, where is he now?" The boy stood up and answered sadly, "Do you know him well? He is a well-known businessman. He was already a deputy. He's living the high life now. I was a driver for him at the time. There you go. What can I say now? Who's to prove it? It was his own fault. I signed everything voluntarily. All right, I'll go. I won't bother you. I'm relieved when I tell you all about it." Kelly took William's hand. "Don't go anywhere. Son, stay here. I'm so used to you. I got so used to you. It hurt me so much. You don't look like a killer, that's all." I kept thinking, lying there, could I have been so wrong about a man? Let's go on living as before. I don't care what people talk about in the village. Let them look after themselves, not pry into other people's lives. Oh, I'm starving. I don't have anything. What am I? William laughed and said, "Woo, then I'll go back to doing chores, because I'm in the hospital with a pain in my sides. Thank you for believing me. Don't tell me off. Just when I think I'll have to wander the world again. And begging for alms, I don't want to live." Kelly went to cook dinner, glad that William was not involved in the murder of her daughter. After all, she really managed to love him as her own. She watched out the window as he deftly cleans the rabbits, cages, and feeds the animals. She could see that he really enjoyed it. The man, sometimes wrinkled with pain, not yet fully healed wound made itself felt, but with the animals he worked long and to the credit. Then they ate fried potatoes with onions, drank tea with jam. And they both felt so light and good, as if a huge concrete slab had been removed from their hearts, which was pressing and preventing them from breathing. Christina, when she found out that Kelly and William had made up and that he was living with her again, was very happy. Now they drank tea almost every night in the gazebo, which William had renovated and restored. They played already and chatted about everything. One day, when there was a terrible heat, the young people were helping a pensioner, tying tomatoes. She suddenly suggested, "Christina, you should take William to the river. While it's hot, take a swim. You're sweating. He probably doesn't know how beautiful it is here. In the meantime, I'm going inside for a nap. I'm tired." The young people decided to take their advice, and Christina took William to the bank of the river Kamenka. What a beauty it really was here. The view was simply stunning. As long as you look into the distance, forests, fields, boundless and blue, clear skied with beautiful clouds. The girl undressed first, and leaving her swimsuit, "What are you doing?" "Let's go swimming. The water's great. Let's swim to the other side. There are beautiful lilies there. I'll show you. The locals say there are even mermaids here, but I'm laughing, of course, and I don't believe in such fairy tales." William shifted from foot to foot and finally confessed, "Yes, I do not know how to swim. I do not dare at all. When I was a kid, I went to the river with some boys. They foolishly tried to drown me, and I went down. Barely got me out. I've been afraid of water ever since." Christina didn't laugh at him. That's what he was most afraid of. She just took him by the hand. "It's all right. So I'll teach you." "Okay. First, we go into the water. Now hold on to me and do your hands. That's it. He tried to repeat after her and admired her slender figure with that open smile. How beautiful she was. Droplets of water glistened on her skin and shimmered. The sun played in her blue eyes. At last William was able to swim quite a distance. Christina was genuinely happy and snuggled up to him. She wanted to kiss him on the cheek in a friendly way. But the boy suddenly pulled her to him, and suddenly, firmly and passionately kissed her on the lips. It was so gentle, sincere, and beautiful that the girl responded to the kiss. As they rested, William quietly said, "Christina, sweetheart, I have liked you very much since the first minute I saw you. I dreamed of being sick all the time, just to have you touch me just once more with your gentle hand. And now I am sure that I love you. I know I'm not much of a groom. Why would you want an ex-con who everyone thinks is a murderer? I'd really like to change my life. I really like farming. I'm even thinking about going into farming. I like living in the countryside. The big city is not for me. But my biggest dream is to live my life together with you as a family and have children. If you don't want any of this, if you don't love me, just say the word and I'll never bother you again." Everything inside Christina rejoiced and trembled. Here were the cherished words she had waited so long for from William. After all, secretly at night she dreamed of the same thing. She felt, in a feminine way, that William was her soulmate. They were kindred, similar souls, people. She didn't care about people. All that mattered was how she felt. Christina pressed herself closer to the boy and answered, "That's what I wanted too, honestly. That's why I don't leave the village. I feel comfortable and calm here. After my shift at the district center, I rest my soul only here. And I also really like you too. Everyone can make a mistake. We're all not perfect. The main thing is to make a conclusion and move on. And God is merciful. He forgives our sins. If a person has sincerely repented and no longer repeats mistakes, and they jumped into the water from a runaway, and then they laughed, embraced each other, and basked in the water, cool and fresh water. From that day on, a stormy and passionate romance swirled between William and Christina. The couple signed at the village hall, and they became legally husband and wife. Everyone decided to live at Kelly's house. There was plenty of room. The yard was spacious. William decided to slowly put his plan into action. He built a barn and began to breed rabbits in large numbers first, because it did not require much investment. Neighbors just laughed at him. Like, "Where have you seen that someone got rich on rabbits?" But the guy did not listen to anyone. He went to exhibitions, bought special breeds, crossed, bred valuable offspring, and already with his pets he went to exhibitions. Things went on, and the farm began to buy from him the youngsters. At the same time, William mastered beekeeping. Since childhood, he liked this business. One might say it was his dream. And already in 3 years he developed more than 100 hives, taking them out into the field. The honey was particularly valuable herbs. People now went to them specifically for propolis and royal jelly. After all, it is very valuable in medicine and cosmetology. Now, no one made fun of the former prisoner. The man was respected in the village. His house was exemplary, and his wife was the most beautiful. A daughter, Betty, was growing up in the family. A little girl as adorable as her mother. Kelly was happy for the young family, of which she was now a part, and enjoyed babysitting her granddaughter. And she kept thinking to herself, "What luck that I had invited William to my place, that I had not sent him away. What a golden boy he was, wasn't he? Not like Michael. Oh, Michael. He was doing his time, and he wrote a few letters to Grandma, thinking that prison was his home, and that he couldn't resist temptation when he was on the outside. Kelly quietly went to the notary and wrote a will where she left the house to William after her death. This decision was very difficult for her, but she was sure that the man would not read it, would not sell his native land for next to nothing. and would live and work on it. She still did not forget Michael, even though he wanted to poison her. She still sent him parcels whenever possible. But alas, she could not change her grandson. The boomerang of fate also struck the deputy businessman. He crashed in an accident. He was still driving drunk and was confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. His business went bust. His competitors immediately seized his tidbits, and now his career as a deputy was also out of the question. His wife, upon learning of his numerous affairs and mistresses, divorced the scoundrel, suing him for almost everything on his 3 children. And the businessman himself was sent to a home for the disabled. All this William told one of the buyers, who came from the capital. The man was shocked and decided to share the news with Kelly. She only shook her head. My prayers had reached the Lord. God's judgment is complete. Everyone is given according to his deeds. It is not for nothing that they say, don't do evil to another. He will come back. Serves this scoundrel right? Is it a joke he ruined your daughter's fate? Let him feel it now. How does it feel to have everyone turn their backs on you? And you're an infirm invalid. Soon Christina was pregnant again and laughing in jest. William, stop. You're not going to let me get out of maternity at all. So the maternity ward joked about when to wait for the third. The man pulled his beloved to him and whispered a promise. 3 in all. I dreamed so much about this. A big family, a beloved wife, and long-awaited babies. Thank you, sweetheart, for believing me then, taking a risk and committing to my life. It was Kelly's love for you and kindness that gave me the motivation to change, to start living my life differently again. If it weren't for you, where would I be now, like Michael in jail? Or would I be dead under a fence somewhere from starvation or disease? Know this, I love you more than life. Christina melted at such words and replied, I am very lucky. I have the best husband, father, child, family man, and master of the house in the world. And all this, you are my good one. I love you too and will be there for you no matter what happens. In time, everyone had forgotten that William had once sat. Now it was William, the respected farmer and beekeeper. So everyone can change their lives, start fresh. The main thing is a sincere desire and responsive people around.